They laughed before the engine ever turned over. Not the polite kind of laughter, either. The sharp, dismissive kind that carried across the sun-bleached paddock like gravel thrown at glass. It followed her as she walked toward the starting grid, helmet tucked under her arm, grease stains still dark beneath her fingernails. Some people nudged each other. Others didn't bother to hide their smirks. A kid, someone scoffed. A girl, another muttered. Whose idea was this? Lena Carter heard every word. She always did. At 17, she stood out in a field of seasoned drivers twice her age. They wore pristine racing suits with sponsor logos stitched in neat, expensive lines. Their crews hovered around them with tablets, headsets, and matching uniforms. Lena had none of that. Just an old red and black racing jacket that once belonged to her father, a dented toolbox, and a car so patched together it looked like it had survived 3 different lifetimes. Car number 47. The Junkyard Special, as one driver had called it earlier that morning. The announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeakers. Next up on the amateur heat, entry 47, driver Lena Carter. A ripple of laughter rolled through the crowd again. Lena didn't look up. She didn't need to. Her eyes were already on the car, on the machine she knew better than anyone else in the world. Every bolt, every weld, every scar in the metal told a story she could recite by heart. Her father stood a few steps back, arms crossed, face unreadable. Tom Carter had spent his life under cars, not behind podiums. He was the kind of mechanic people went to when every other shop had given up. The kind who could listen to an engine cough once and tell you exactly what was wrong. His garage sat on the edge of town, a narrow building with peeling paint and a flickering sign that read Carter Auto Repair. Business was never great, but it was honest. And it was where Lena grew up. While other kids learned piano or soccer, Lena learned torque specs and timing belts. She learned how to pull an engine before she was tall enough to see over the hood without standing on a crate. When her mother left and money got tighter, the garage became more than a workplace. It became their world. The idea of racing hadn't come from some grand dream. It started small, late nights after the shop closed, when Lena would sit in the driver's seat of whatever car they were fixing and imagine what it would feel like to push it past its limits. It grew when she and her father salvaged an old chassis from a scrapyard, its frame twisted, but its bones still strong. They rebuilt it together. Piece by piece. Night by night. Mistake by mistake. People didn't see that. They saw a girl in a borrowed jacket and a car that looked like it didn't belong. One of the other drivers walked past her now, helmet gleaming, confidence dripping from every step. He paused just long enough to glance at her car and shake his head. "Hope your dad tightened the wheels," he said with a grin. "Wouldn't want it falling apart on lap 1. A few nearby crew members chuckled. Lena finally looked up. Her gaze met his, not angry, not defensive, just steady. Calm. The way it always was when she was about to drive. "It won't," she said simply. He laughed again and walked off. Tom shifted his weight, jaw tightening. He hated this part. The looks. The comments. The way people assumed things before the race ever started. He wanted to say something, to defend her, to tell them they had no idea what she was capable of. But Lena had asked him not to. "Let the car talk," she'd said the night before, wiping oil from her hands. "It's louder than words." Now, as she set her helmet on the roof and climbed into the driver's seat, the noise around her faded. The world narrowed to the familiar smell of fuel and metal, to the worn steering wheel molded perfectly to her grip. She closed her eyes for half a second. Her father leaned down, resting a hand on the window frame. "You ready?" Lena nodded. "Yeah." He hesitated. "Remember, smooth on the throttle. Don't chase them on the first lap." A small smile tugged at her lips. "I know." He stepped back. The official walked down the line, signaling drivers to start their engines. One by one, engines roared to life, deep, polished sounds tuned by professionals with expensive tools. The ground vibrated. The crowd cheered. Lena turned the key. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Someone in the stands laughed loudly. Then the engine caught. Not with a whine. Not with a stutter. It roared. Low and fierce, like something alive and finally awake. Heads turned. The sound didn't match the car's appearance. It wasn't sloppy or uneven. It was clean, balanced, confident. The kind of sound mechanics recognized immediately, the sound of an engine that had been built with care, not money. Tom felt his chest tighten. Around the track, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the announcer hesitated. Lena's hands steadied on the wheel. Her foot rested lightly on the pedal. She could feel every vibration, every pulse of power humming beneath her. For the first time that day, no one was laughing. And as the starter raised the flag, the crowd leaned forward, suddenly unsure. Because whatever they'd expected from the mechanic's daughter, it wasn't this. The green light hadn't even flashed yet, and Lena could already feel it, the tension tightening like a coiled spring beneath her ribs. This was the moment that separated dreamers from drivers. The engines growled in unison, a chorus of power straining against restraint. Heat shimmered above the asphalt. Lena's visor reflected the blinking red lights ahead, each one counting down to chaos. She inhaled slowly, steadying her breath the way her father had taught her, through the nose, out through the mouth. Around her, the other drivers revved aggressively, engines barking like territorial animals. They wanted dominance before the race even began. Lena didn't answer back. She waited. The lights went dark. The track exploded. Tires screamed. Gravel sprayed. The pack surged forward in a violent wave of motion, metal and muscle fighting for the same narrow strip of road. Lena released the clutch smoothly, rolling into the throttle just enough to keep traction. For a split second, it looked like she'd been left behind. A few drivers smirked inside their helmets. Then her car hooked up. The engine delivered power cleanly, exactly as she'd tuned it. The rear tires bit into the asphalt, and car number 47 lunged forward with a suddenness that erased 3 cars before the first corner. The crowd gasped. Lena's focus narrowed instantly. No noise. No faces. Just breaking points, apexes, exits. The track unfurled in her mind like a map she'd memorized 100 times on paper, tracing it with greasy fingers late at night in the garage. First corner. Hard braking. She felt the weight transfer, the suspension compressing just as intended. She clipped the apex with inches to spare, the car rotating smoothly beneath her. 2 more positions gained. Her mirrors filled with a flash of polished paint as one driver dove inside, trying to force her wide. Lena didn't flinch. She held her line, trusted the grip, and powered out of the corner while he ran out of road. Behind her, someone cursed over the radio. Up in the stands, laughter had turned into murmurs. Tom stood near the pit wall, hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He recognized the rhythm of her driving immediately. Not reckless. Not defensive. Precise. Every move had intention behind it. By the end of the first lap, Lena was no longer at the back. She was hunting. Car by car, she closed the gap. Some drivers made mistakes under pressure, braking too late, missing their marks. Others underestimated her, leaving doors open they would have slammed shut for anyone else. She took every invitation. Down the back straight, her engine sang, pulling harder than cars that should have outpaced her on paper. The junkyard special stayed planted, stable, alive beneath her hands. The announcer's voice returned, louder now, edged with disbelief. Looks like entry 47 is making moves early on. A pause. That's Lena Carter, folks. Keep an eye on her. Lena didn't hear it. She heard the subtle change in pitch when she needed to upshift. She felt the tremor in the steering wheel that told her the tires were nearing their limit. She adjusted without thinking, body and machine working as one. Halfway through the race, a yellow flag waved ahead, debris on the track. Drivers slowed, bunching up again. Lena's heartbeat thudded in her ears. Restarts were dangerous. Unpredictable. This was where nerves showed. As the pack crawled along, one driver pulled up alongside her, helmet turning in her direction. She could almost feel his stare through the visor. He revved his engine sharply. Intimidation. Lena didn't respond. Her eyes stayed forward, fixed on the official at the edge of the track. She flexed her fingers on the wheel, remembering all the nights she'd sat in the garage while rain hammered the tin roof, her father explaining weight balance and throttle control with a piece of chalk on the concrete floor. "Anyone can drive fast," he'd said. "The trick is driving smart." The yellow flag lifted. Green again. The field surged, but this time Lena was ready. She timed the restart perfectly, rolling on the throttle a fraction of a second before the others reacted. Her car leapt forward, slipping into a gap that hadn't existed a heartbeat earlier. Another pass. The driver she'd just beaten slammed his steering wheel in frustration. Now she was in the top 5. The crowd was on its feet. Tom's breath caught in his throat. He'd always known she was good. But seeing it here, under pressure, against drivers with years of experience, it felt unreal. On lap 7, Lena made her boldest move yet. Entering a tight left-hander, she took a wider line than usual, braking later than anyone else dared. The car danced on the edge of control, tires skimming the limit. For a terrifying moment, the rear stepped out. She caught it perfectly. The car snapped back into line, and she powered through, sliding past 2 cars in one fluid motion. The stands erupted. The announcer shouted something, her name, probably, but it blurred into noise as Lena pushed harder, confidence building with every corner. By the final lap, only 1 car remained ahead of her. The same driver who'd mocked her in the paddock. His car weaved defensively, blocking every attempt she made to pass. Lena studied his movements, patient, calculating. He was nervous now. Overdriving. Protecting instead of racing. That was when she heard it. A faint rattle. Just for a second. Her engine note shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible. Lena's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. And with half a lap to go, she had a choice to make. Section 3. The choice that changed everything. The sound was so small that no one else would have noticed it. A soft metallic rattle, swallowed almost instantly by the roar of the track. But Lena heard it. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as her mind raced faster than the car ever could. That noise wasn't random. It wasn't nothing. It was a warning, one she'd learned to respect after years of standing beside her father, listening to engines speak in languages most people never learned. Something was coming loose. She checked her gauges in a quick, practiced glance. Oil pressure, steady. Temperature, climbing, but still within range. No flashing lights. No smoke. Whatever it was, it hadn't reached the point of catastrophe. Yet. The final lap sign flashed overhead. 1 lap. 1 chance. Ahead of her, the lead driver swerved again, blocking the inside line like a man guarding a secret. The crowd was deafening now, a wall of sound crashing against her helmet. Somewhere beyond it, her father stood watching, his heart likely pounding harder than hers. Lena's instinct screamed at her to push, to ignore the noise, to chase the win while she still could. But another voice cut through the adrenaline, calm, steady, familiar. If something doesn't sound right, listen. Her father's words echoed from years ago, spoken over the hum of a half-disassembled engine. Racing isn't about proving you're fearless, he'd said. It's about knowing when to be brave and when to be smart. The rattle came again as she exited the corner. Louder this time. Lena exhaled sharply. She could push the engine harder, risk it all for a shot at first place. Or she could adjust, protect the car, trust herself to find another way. Most people would have chosen brute force. Lena chose precision. She eased off the throttle just a fraction, shifting her line to reduce stress on the drivetrain. The car felt different immediately, less aggressive but more stable. The rattling faded to a distant whisper. Behind her, another driver closed in, sensing weakness. The pressure was on. Up in the stands, confusion rippled through the crowd. "Why is she slowing?" someone shouted. She had him. Tom felt his stomach drop. He knew that sound. He'd heard it 1,000 times in the garage, a mounting bolt loosening, threatening to become something far worse. He also knew Lena. She wouldn't panic. She never did. The lead driver glanced in his mirror and saw the gap widen slightly. Confidence surged. He pushed harder, braking later, accelerating earlier. Too hard. Lena saw it immediately, the subtle wobble under braking, the way his rear end stepped out just a bit more with each corner. He was driving scared now, not smooth. Mistakes were coming. They always did. As they barreled toward the long straight, Lena tucked in behind him, letting the slipstream do the work. She kept her engine just below its limit, every sense tuned to the car's responses. The rattle stayed quiet. Halfway down the straight, she moved. Not to pass, yet, but to show him she was still there. The lead driver stiffened, reacting exactly as she'd hoped. He defended the inside too aggressively, forcing himself off the optimal line. His tires protested, grip fading. Lena waited. At the next corner, she took the outside line. Longer, riskier, but smoother. She braked early, rolled through the turn, and fed the throttle in with surgical care. Her exit speed was perfect. The engine surged, not strained, not angry but strong. She drew alongside him. The crowd lost its collective mind. Two cars raced side by side, inches apart, engines screaming in harmony. Lena's heart hammered, but her mind was clear. She could see it all, the track, the line, the exact moment where it would be decided. Then it happened. The lead driver overcorrected. Just a twitch of the wheel. Just enough. His rear tires broke loose, and his car snapped sideways, sliding toward the edge of the track. He caught it, barely, but the moment was gone. Lena shot past. For the first time in the race, car number 47 was in the lead. Tom's knees nearly gave out. But the victory was fragile. Lena felt it in her bones. The engine rattled again. Angrier now, warning her that time was running out. One more corner. The final turn loomed ahead, a tight bend that punished impatience. Lena slowed more than instinct wanted, sacrificing raw speed for control. The car behind her lunged, desperate. She hit the apex cleanly. The engine roared one last time as she powered out, straightening the wheel, eyes locked on the checkered flag whipping in the wind. The noise from the stands became something physical, a force pushing her forward. She crossed the line. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the engine coughed violently. Lena killed the ignition instantly, coasting as her heart threatened to burst from her chest. Silence followed her to a stop. And then, the crowd erupted. People screamed, cheered, stomped their feet. The announcer's voice cracked as he shouted her name, repeating it again and again like he couldn't quite believe it. Lena pulled off her helmet, chest heaving, eyes wide. She had won. But as she climbed out of the car, she saw her father running toward her. Not smiling, not cheering. Worried. He reached the car just as a thin trail of smoke curled up from beneath the hood. And Lena knew the race might have been over. But the real test was just beginning. The smoke wasn't thick, but it was enough. Enough to turn celebration into hesitation. Enough to make people step back instead of rushing forward. The cheers softened into confused murmurs as track officials waved for fire extinguishers and safety crews jogged toward car number 47. Lena stood frozen beside the door, helmet dangling from her hand. Her heart was still racing, but not from victory anymore. From fear. Tom reached her first. He grabbed her shoulders, turning her gently but urgently, scanning her face, her arms, her legs. Are you hurt? She shook her head. I'm okay. I shut it down as soon as it coughed. He exhaled, relief flooding his features, then turned his attention to the car just as a marshal lifted the hood. A hiss escaped. The smell of hot oil filled the air. Tom leaned in, eyes narrowing, already diagnosing. Motor mount, he muttered. Front left. I should have reinforced it more. Lena's stomach twisted. Dad. No, he said quickly, cutting her off. You did exactly right. You saved it. The words settled her, but the damage was done. The engine sat slightly crooked in the bay, the source of the rattle now painfully obvious. It hadn't failed completely, but it had come dangerously close. Around them, people stared. The same people who'd laughed hours earlier now whispered with awe. Some pointed at the car. others at Lena. She actually won. With that thing. Did you hear how it sounded? The announcer's voice boomed again, steadier now, filled with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed is an upset for the ages. Entry 47 has taken first place in the amateur heat. Applause thundered through the stands. Lena felt dizzy. She smiled, then laughed, then realized her hands were shaking. Officials guided her toward the podium area, cameras suddenly appearing where there had been none before. Someone thrust a microphone toward her face. "How does it feel to win your first race?" the reporter asked. Lena blinked. Her first race. The words felt unreal. I don't know yet, she admitted. I think it'll take a while to sink in. Behind the scenes, Tom stayed with the car, answering questions from tech inspectors. They circled it like scientists examining a rare specimen, peering at welds and components. Who built this? One asked. Tom wiped his hands on a rag. We did. They raised an eyebrow. You and who? My daughter. That earned him a look, then a slow nod of respect. On the podium, Lena stood awkwardly as the second and third place drivers joined her. The man she'd passed in the final moments avoided her eyes. His jaw was tight, pride clearly bruised. When the anthem played, Lena stared out at the crowd, trying to reconcile this moment with the nights she'd fallen asleep on a grease-stained couch in the garage, hands aching from work most people never noticed. The trophy was heavy when they placed it in her hands. Too heavy to feel real. After the ceremony, as people drifted away, a man in a crisp blazer approached Tom. He was older, silver-haired, with the posture of someone used to being listened to. I'm Richard Hale, he said, offering a hand. I sponsor few teams in the regional circuit. Tom hesitated, then shook it. Tom Carter. I've been watching races here for 20 years, Hale continued. I've never seen driving like that from someone so young. Or in a car like this. His eyes flicked toward Lena, who stood nearby, trophy clutched to her chest. What's her story? Tom glanced at his daughter. She's just good. Hale smiled slightly. Good doesn't cover it. He reached into his jacket and handed Tom a business card. If you're interested, I'd like to talk about helping her move up. Better equipment. Proper testing. A real chance. Tom's throat tightened. We don't have money for. Hale raised a hand. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering opportunity. Before Tom could respond, Lena approached. Dad. He turned the card over in his fingers, conflicted. Racing at higher levels meant more risk, more pressure, more ways for things to go wrong. But it also meant something he'd never been able to give her before. A future. Meanwhile, across the paddock, the lead driver from earlier was arguing loudly with an official. Her car shouldn't have passed inspection. That engine's illegal. The accusations spread quickly, like a spark in dry grass. Lena stiffened. What's he saying? Tom sighed. He's sore. Officials approached again, faces serious. We're going to need to re-inspect your vehicle, one said. Full teardown, just to be sure. A knot formed in Lena's chest. A teardown meant scrutiny, delays, possibility. If they found anything questionable, even unintentional, it could all be taken away. The trophy, the win, the respect. Hale watched quietly from a distance, unreadable. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the track, Lena stood beside her car, suddenly feeling smaller than she had all day. She'd proven she belonged on the track. Now she had to prove she'd earned it. And this time, there would be no hiding behind an engine's roar. The teardown took longer than the race. That was the cruelest part. While the sun slid toward the horizon and the crowd thinned to a handful of lingering fans, Lena stood beside her father as officials dismantled the car she loved bolt by bolt. Every clink of metal felt like a verdict waiting to be spoken. The opening hook came not with noise, but with silence. No cheers. No engine. Just the soft scrape of tools and the weight of everyone watching. Lena crossed her arms tightly, fighting the urge to step in, to explain every choice they'd made, every compromise born from necessity rather than advantage. She knew this car. knew it was legal, knew it had been built with honesty. But knowing didn't stop fear. One official held up a component and conferred quietly with another. They checked measurements, compared notes, flipped through rulebooks smudged with fingerprints. The driver who'd accused her lingered nearby, arms folded, a tight smile on his face. Tom leaned toward Lena and spoke softly. Whatever happens, remember this, you drove clean. No one can take that away. She nodded, though her throat burned. Minutes stretched into an hour. Finally, the head inspector straightened and cleared his throat. Miss Carter. Lena's heart leapt into her ears. Yes, she said. He gestured toward the car, or what remained of it. Your vehicle complies with all regulations. No illegal modifications. No violations. For a second, Lena didn't understand the words. Then her father let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. Applause broke out, not the thunderous roar from earlier, but something deeper. Respect. People clapped because they meant it. Even a few drivers joined in, nodding toward Lena as they did. The accuser looked away. The inspector continued, that motor mount nearly cost you the engine. But choosing to back off when you did? That's not something we see often. That's Rassecraft. Lena swallowed hard. Thank you. Richard Hale stepped forward then, clapping once, deliberately. I think that settles that. He turned to Lena. You didn't just win today. You made people pay attention. Tom watched the exchange carefully. Hale's interest wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was serious. They talked as the crew reassembled what they could of the car. About schooling. About safety. About a test day Hale was willing to sponsor. No contracts, no pressure. Just information, Hale said. You and your father decide the rest. As the track emptied, Lena sat on the hood of her wounded car, trophy resting beside her. The metal was still warm, familiar, comforting. Tom joined her, handing her a bottle of water. You okay? She nodded slowly. I think so. He hesitated. I was scared today. She looked at him, surprised. You've always been scared. He laughed quietly. True. But today, I was proud too. The word hit harder than any applause. Lena stared out at the track, now quiet, the asphalt marked with black lines from battles already fading. They laughed at me, she said softly. Tom nodded. I know. And then they stopped. Yeah, he said. Engines have a way of doing that. The loudspeakers crackled one last time as officials announced final results, her name echoing across the emptying stands. Lena closed her eyes and let it wash over her, not as noise, but as proof. Proof that she belonged. As they loaded the car onto the trailer, a young girl approached, clutching a program to her chest. Excuse me, she said shyly. You were amazing. Lena smiled and signed the paper. Thanks. Do you think I could race someday? The girl asked. Lena didn't hesitate. Yes. Absolutely. The girl's eyes lit up as she ran back to her family. The sky had turned orange by the time they pulled out of the track. Lena watched it through the passenger window, exhaustion settling into her bones in the best possible way. She thought about the engine, how close it had come to failing, how listening instead of forcing had changed everything. Some victories were loud. Others stayed with you quietly, long after the roar faded. Behind them, the track disappeared from view. Ahead of them, the road stretched open. And for the first time, Lena didn't feel like the mechanic's daughter trying to prove something. She felt like a driver, one the world would remember.